Hello, kiddies. It's your old pal, the Crypt Keeper. And you're listening to Three Guys in a Flick. The good, the bad, and the gruesomely absurd.
Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats. The show is about to begin.
What an excellent day for an exorcism.
Three guys and a flick with Duncan and John. Dive into the movies well after the dawn. From the good to the bad to the wildly absurd. They give a fuck about films. Their voices are heard.
Welcome back. You are listening to Three Guys in a Flick. This is where we review the good, the bad, and the absurd. Tonight's episode, The Exorcist. Beware spoilers. Coming to you from Reagan's bedroom in Georgetown. Damn, it's cold in here. And what the fuck is that smell?
Whew, it is rank.
My name's Don. And to my right, we have the comic book guy, John.
Howdy ho.
And to my left, we have the professor, Ken.
Hello, everybody.
Tonight,
I'm a little worried about him over there.
Why? Did that sound odd to you?
Well, it's just that his head is backwards.
Oh, I thought that was normal. Tonight, we are continuing in our Halloween theme movies, and tonight we are talking about The Exorcist. Do you remember the first time you saw this movie?
I saw it on TV, and it definitely freaked me out, but I was really overwhelmed by the movie, and I got to say, it's definitely something that I was watching, between my fingers type of thing.
Oh, I hear you. What about you?
For me, it was one of those movies that I had heard about. There were legends about it, and I kept begging my parents, when I would rent a movie on a weekend, this is the movie I want to rent, and they kept saying, no, it's not. Finally, they let me rent it, and boy, did I suffer because of it.
I remember, too, watching it kind of through my fingertips at a young age with my older brothers. And years ago, they re-released it in the theater, the version you've never seen.
Yeah, the extended version.
2000?
Yeah. And that was the first time.
Did you go?
Yeah, that was the first time and only time I've ever seen The Exorcist in the theater.
So it had the staircase.
It had the spider crawl.
Yeah.
Yes.
What the fuck was that like when you saw that?
It made me uneasy. That movie still scared me. In the year 2000, in the theater, watching The Exorcist, I was legitimately scared.
How many times would you say you've seen this movie now?
Total 5, maybe.
How about you, Professor?
This would be probably the third time.
For me, I think it's like 20 times. I've seen this movie so many times.
Yeah.
It's one of those classics. It's like a go-to. It's one of those that if I run across it on TV, I got to turn it on. But it has to be streaming because I don't want the edited versions. You can't watch an edited version of this.
Well, you can. It's just not as impactful because
you miss all the fun scenes.
I wouldn't.
And the language.
I wouldn't go so far as to call those scenes fun, but I hear what you're saying.
Mm.
So this has been dubbed by many as the scariest movie of all time. And ultimately, that is opinion, right? So I'm curious if there were 1 to maybe 3 movies that you remember legitimately making you scared, what were they?
For me, it's 3 movies. Obviously, this one. It was Prince of Darkness. That one, even watching that one today, still fucks me up a little bit. And then it was the 1978 version of Invasion of the Body Snatchers. That one convinced me as a kid that everyone else around me was already one of the Body Snatcher people.
Yeah, for sure.
Odd people.
What about you, sir?
I haven't really thought about that before. I don't know.
Yeah. For me, it would be 1984's Nightmare on Elm Street. And if you go back and listen to that podcast, I'll tell you all about that experience. This one, for sure. And most recently, The Descent. I remember watching The Descent, feeling pretty freaked out.
Yeah, as you asked the question, and then I'm thinking about that, The Descent was on a short list. And then after you guys started talking, I would also ponder maybe besides The Exorcist, Halloween.
Oh, sure.
First time I saw Halloween.
Yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah. So the common denominator here was The Exorcist.
Yeah. which is amazing because from my research, they didn't want to make this movie. The director really fought to make this movie, and so did the author. But everybody thought possession movies don't work. They're not interesting. There'd only really been another possession movie that came out in like the 1930s. So this was really the second big possession movie. But then after this, because of it doing so amazingly well, it went on to inspire hundreds of other possession movies.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, and the impact that this movie has had on cinema is without a doubt, it is ginormous. It is an Empire State Building impact on the horror industry because, this movie has had such a strong following and it is a solid story. Before this movie came out, you only have just a handful of impactful movies. Back in 1968, you had Rosemary's Baby and the Night of the Living Dead. Before that, you had Psycho in 1960. And then you go back further, you'd probably go back to like Dracula or The Bride of Frankenstein and then Nosferatu. And that's it. And then The Exorcist.
And the biggest impact of this film is you never look at split pea soup again.
I bet that people that eat split pea soup, that has got to be a common reference that is made sometime along the way.
And I bet you the manufacturer of that was not appreciative.
Released on December 26, 1973.
What a kick to the balls. What is that about?
Day after Christmas.
Man.
They wanted to release it on Christmas, but it got pushed back because they thought they would get too much flack.
The Exorcist was directed by William Friedkin. Screenplay by William Peter Blatty. Based on the novel The Exorcist by William Peter Blatty. And it stars Ellen Bernstein, Max von Sydow, Lee J. Cobb, Kitty Wynn, Jack McGowan, Jason Miller, Linda Blair, and a bunch of other smokers.
How'd this movie do, Don?
This movie was made for $12 million and brought in $441 million.
Not too shabby.
Not too shabby at all.
Talking about. It was the number one grossing movie of 1973, I think. Let me rephrase that. I'm not sure if it is the number one grossing movie of 1973, but it's definitely the number one grossing horror movie of 1973.
One thing I read was in its first week, it didn't do so well. I think it said, I don't remember the exact number, but they were getting ready to call it a failure until word started getting around about the movie. And then the lines got so long that the theater owners would bring out coffee to the people standing in line because they were there for hours waiting to see the movie.
Yeah, I saw that too. Back in the day when you couldn't reserve your seat and you actually had to stand in line.
Like commoners.
Yeah. And I was thinking about that. I was thinking, so the box office has so many tickets that they can sell. And as soon as they sell out of those tickets, I mean, that's how long your line is, right? And so some of the premieres or at some of the showings, you had lines that went around the block and kept going. So that's all, 3 showings of that day? 4 showings?
Pretty much.
Fucking crazy.
Yeah, I remember those days in Star Wars.
Yeah.
I just remember getting there so early to get in line for hope that you could run and get a good seat.
Yeah. Yep. This movie is directed by William Friedkin. Are you guys familiar with any of this guy's work?
I've heard of some of his other movies. I've only seen one of his other movies because I know he did The French Connection. He did a movie called Blue Chips that I'd heard of. The movie I've seen that he did was Deal of the Century.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I've seen that. The other one that I've seen of his is To Live and Die in L.A.
That's where I was going with that too. Yeah.
And then he also directed Al Pacino in Cruising.
Yeah.
But yeah, his movie French Connection, that was 2 years before this. And so he was a pretty established guy when he took this project on.
Yeah. When's the last time you watched French Connection?
VHS.
Have you ever seen it?
No, I've never seen it.
Yeah. It's probably been that long for me as well. Interesting. Just go back and take a look.
Mm-hmm.
Gene Hackman at his finest, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Let's talk about this cast a little bit. Ellen Bernstein. What'd you guys think?
I only know her from this.
Yeah, well, I know her from this, Requiem from a Dream, and then maybe a handful of other things, because every time I see her, I say, hey, It's the mom from The Exorcist.
Yeah, I've seen her in a few things, and I thought generally she was good. I did feel a few parts she overacted a little bit, like she was just so much more dramatic than everybody else. But then again, how would you act with your kid all going freaky like that?
It's okay to be hysterical.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Fucking judgy much? Young Linda Blair.
She was good in this. Let's face it, she was good.
I thought she was amazing. I loved her in this. And did you read about her screen tests for this movie?
Kind of.
One of the things the director did, first thing is he says, "Are you okay with swearing?" And she was like, "Hell yeah, I'm good with swearing. It's no problem." She was only like 12 or 13.
I think she was 12 when they filmed this.
And then the director also asked her, just point blank, which really surprised her mother, "Do you know what masturbation is?" And she giggled and she looked at me and she says, "Yeah, doesn't everybody do it?"
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Me neither. I was curious to know, as a parent, do you let your little one do this role?
Well, those scenes, that wasn't her.
When her arm is up in the air, that's her. When it's coming down and you're seeing the skirt level, that was the stand-in because the director would not let her do that part.
Right.
Did you ever see the movie Repossessed?
Yes.
Leslie Nielsen?
Yeah. Basically, they bring her back to reprise her role as being possessed and all that.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a TV series. I never heard about this TV series. There was a TV series called Exorcist that they had Reagan supposedly grown up into Gina Davis, and now the same demon was after her kid.
Ah, interesting.
Well, I got to say, Linda Blair, she has a lot of clunkers, a lot of duds that she's done.
Oh, yeah. She kind of turned into a B-movie actress.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But, I mean...
A really good-looking B-movie actress.
Well, yeah. But after this movie, I mean, as a kid, it wasn't easy on her.
No, she had...
And there's a lot of stuff that she won't talk about. And she had to have security guards. The studio got her security guards to walk her around. And,
Zealots.
I mean, yeah, because people actually thought this little girl was evil. They couldn't separate fact from fiction. And it's just too bad that it had to happen that way.
Did you hear, kind of going off on a side tangent here, did you hear the new medical term that this movie created?
What?
Cinema hysteria, where people just went crazy. They thought either they were possessed or, like you mentioned the zealots of people making threats to her because they thought she was possessed, things like that. They lost their minds. And the only other movie that medical term has been used on or used for was Jaws, with the people who went crazy wanting to kill sharks.
Huh?
Cinema hysteria
The power of film.
will compel you.
Let's talk about the rest of this cast. Max von Sydow. He's in it for maybe 2 seconds.
Well,
10 minutes.
Yeah.
it's not his greatest role, but he was good in it.
Oh, brother.
Here
Here it comes.
Oh, what was his greatest role?
Flash Gordon, of course.
See,
Ming the Merciless.
Oh, fuck. That's right. He was in that.
Of course.
Yes, that's what I was
Did-
talking about.
Did you know he had troubles finding future jobs after this movie?
I don't doubt it.
Because he was, I think, 40 at the time they made this movie.
44.
44, and the makeup they put on him made him look so much older that different studios thought he was much older, and so they weren't casting him in movies.
No, crazy.
And he was not a fan of the makeup. It sucked.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Jason Miller, Father Karras, not in much.
He was new to acting. He had done
This was his first role.
he'd done some plays, and originally for his role, Stacy Keach was offered the role.
Huh, interesting.
And basically, Jason Miller begged to let me do a screen test. Let me do a screen test. So the director was like, fine, I'll let you come in, but you're not going to get the role. Well, he came in, blew them away because he almost joined into the priesthood. So he had some religious background, all of that, blew him away. And they ended up having to buy out Stacy Keach, give him basically the money they were going to pay him to do the movie.
Wow.
Just go away and let him be in it.
Well, he has definitely solidified himself as Father Karras.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept thinking when he come on screen last night, I'm thinking, God, he reminds me a lot of Rocky.
I thought the same thing.
He was a boxer, too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Another guy that they were throwing around for that role was Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine Jack playing a priest.
Mm-mm.
I don't know why. Devil, yes, but not a priest.
Well, that was ultimately what led to him not being considered for it, because he can't be a priest. Nobody's going to buy that.
There you go.
Do you know-
Imagine the movie we would have gotten. What about the score?
We had a couple of different places where the music is really good, but I wanted more of it. Early on in the movie, there's a particular set of strings that I really like that's the Exorcist theme.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't get very much of that. And I was expecting to get more of that at the end of the movie, and we didn't get it there either.
And, going back and watching it last night, I forgot how little the score is actually in it.
There's not a lot.
And the Tubular Bells, that tune that
Yep.
is iconic for The Exorcist, only happens when Ellen Bernstein is walking home
Yeah, she's walking
in
down the
the
street.
in the beginning of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept thinking it also played when Father Merrin gets out of the cab and is standing in front of the house. I thought it played there. It doesn't.
Nope.
It doesn't play anywhere else until the
Yeah.
very, very end.
Yep. What do you guys think this movie excels the most at? You consider a couple of different things. You could talk about gore, or you could talk about how frightening it is, or the suspense, or maybe how spooky it is. Or do you catch my drift a little bit?
I think so. So not so much technically, right? You're talking about mood feel, maybe?
Yeah.
If I had to describe The Exorcist in one word, I would say it is very unnerving.
Okay.
For me, this is almost like a master class in subliminal messaging within a movie, in that the director did some fancy things to try to make you feel certain ways and to get certain messages without realizing it. One of the things he did, if you watch the movie closely, and now I almost want to go back and see if I can catch it all, is there's a lot, almost every other scene is someone ascending, coming up stairs, walking up a hill, just walking. They're always walking up, which he purposely put in there to represent Christianity. There's a lot of ascension talk in Christianity. He put in those little flashes, those 3 little flashes of the demon's face every so often. I didn't even catch it. I still haven't caught it. At the end, right before Damien jumps out the window, did you catch the flashes of his mom above the curtain? I've never even caught that, and I just read about that.
Yeah. The one that threw me off was when Ellen Bernstein's in the kitchen and the lights are flickering, and and there's the flash of Pazuzu on the fucking oven hood.
Yeah.
I think that this movie is an iconic movie for its creep factor, the spookiness of it, because I can't think of too many other movies where it stays with you afterwards. It leaves you unsettled, and you linger on it for days. And so this is what I think makes the movie so damn terrifying.
Oh, I agree.
So John already mentioned that it was nominated, I believe, for 10 Oscars, and it did win 2. So it was nominated for picture, actress, supporting actor, supporting actress, director, cinematography, art direction, and film editing. And it won for sound and writing.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
It was also the first horror movie that was ever nominated for a Best Picture.
Ah.
Is it about that time, Don?
Why, yes, my fellow demons, it is about that time.
Mwahaha.
Welcome to another edition of Master Movie Trivia. I am your reigning champ. You may call me the champ. I have compiled 5 questions and 5 questions only to test your knowledge of the movie we are reviewing. Each question could be worth multiple points, so if you know the answer, say it. And please wait until I finish each question. Question number 1. What was the name of Reagan's imaginary friend?
Captain Howdy.
Captain Howdy is correct. Bonus question. How did she summon him?
The Ouija board.
Ouija board. Question number 2. What message appears on Reagan's stomach?
Help me.
Ah, well
I
done.
think he was ahead of me.
I know I can hear. Question number 3. What does Reagan tell one of her mom's party guests before she pisses on the floor?
You'll die up there.
Mm-hmm.
You'll die up there. I just realized, you know what that dude was?
An astronaut.
He was an astronaut.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's how I took it as well.
Yeah. Question number 4. What medicine did the doctor first prescribe for Reagan?
Riobin?
Nope.
Well, they ended up with Thorazine.
Thorazine.
No, that was the second one.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
The first one I didn't
Ritalin.
recognize.
The first one was Ritalin, and then they moved up to Thorazine.
Oh, well, there you go. I'm going to give you 2 extra points for that. Yeah, keep it up, fuckface. I'm going to give you 2 extra points for that, and now we are tied. And question number 5. What was the investigating officer's name who was investigating the first death?
Lieutenant Kinderman.
Lieutenant Kinderman. All right, comic book guy, edging out the professor only by a little bit. Congratulations, you were tonight's winner and one step closer to movie immortality. In northern Iraq, priest Marin takes part in an archaeological dig in the ancient ruins of Hatra. During the dig, he finds a stone talisman of a winged being that invokes a concerned look on his face. He then has a vision in which a giant version of the same being appears nearby, silently confronting him. In Georgetown, Washington, D.C., actress Chris McNeil is filming a movie directed by her friend Burke Dennings. She rents a luxurious home where she lives with her 12-year-old daughter, Reagan, and hired staff. Meanwhile, Father Damien Karras, a psychiatrist who counsels priests at Georgetown University, visits his ailing mother in New York. He later admits to his colleagues that he is struggling with a crisis of faith. So this movie starts off in northern Iraq, and they are having an archaeological dig.
It's actually at a real dig site in Iraq.
Yeah. And I thought the first thing that popped into my mind was Raiders of the Lost Ark.
I got that vibe as well.
And I don't know if that's my psyche trying to get me to relax a little bit before we get into this intense movie, but from the opening frame, I feel uneasy as soon as it starts.
Well, it starts kind of with, I believe, the Father Marin standing on the hill with the sun behind him. And so I thought that silhouette reminded me of Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Well, even before then, you have these eerie strings that are playing, and then bam, the Exorcist title card.
Yeah. Red on black.
Do you know what that sound was in the beginning of the movie? That was actually someone with a finger on a glass.
Oh, right.
Going around and around.
Oh, nice.
You do that on a wine glass.
Yeah, nice. And so one of the locals says, "Hey, Father, we found something." And he goes and he takes a look at it and he breaks it apart. And then I start thinking, the Brady Bunch. Don't find the idol, right?
Yeah. Don't surf.
But it turns out it's a little talisman.
Oh.
And Father Marin seems very disturbed that he found it.
Troubled.
Yeah, that it's popped up. Marin's freaked out and he goes to his buddy and he's looking at the artifact and whatever, and Marin says, "I gotta go." And Marin takes off, and this is where he sees the bigger statue of the demon.
Well, we also get something that gets called back to, I think, 2 or 3 times throughout this movie, is he finds that little medallion. I don't think it's a St. Christopher. I can't remember which saint it is, but it's a medallion that shouldn't have been there because it's a newer medallion with that type of thing. And you find that later because it shows up in Damien's dream. And in the end, that's what they find at the bottom of the stairs.
Right.
So it's something that's just reoccurring.
Yeah.
And we have a brief moment where, you are just waiting for some sense of dread to happen. And it's when he's saying goodbye and he's saying goodbye to his colleague, and then the clock suddenly stops ticking.
Right.
It's like, what the hell is that about?
That's red flag number 1. So whatever you're doing, stop doing what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And then we cut to Georgetown and we are introduced to the McNeils. What did you guys think of this whole opening and getting to know Mom and Reagan and finding out that Mom's an actress and just kind of the whole setup of these two people that we're supposed to follow for the next 2 hours?
One thing I really liked after this Iraq scene is how they didn't linger on one particular group or people at one time. Like they would do a little bit of the McNeils, then a little bit of Father Karras, then back to the McNeils, then back to Father Karras. I actually appreciated that the pacing was kind of faster than a lot of these movies.
Yeah. And I thought that Friedkin is taking his time to introduce us to our characters.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the bit I do like is getting to know Father Karras and how he is just kind of going through the motions. And then we get Ellen Bernstein's character, and we find out that she's an actress, and we get to go on set with her.
I want to go back to where we first meet her. It's at night, and Reagan's in bed, and Mother gets up, and I think she's just going to check on her, but she hears something. What is that?
Oh, rats up in the attic.
Yeah, and then she goes in, well, the window's open. Okay. Closes the window, and then she hears it again. She's like, man, and it does not sound nice.
No, it certainly does not. And then
The next morning, hey, can you set traps? There's rats up. No, there's no rats up there. It's empty up. It's clean up there. There's no, just get some traps.
she is adamant that there are rats up there.
Yeah. And inside, you got to be halfway thinking, is she sentencing him to his death?
Maybe.
Well, Carl seemed to know best. Again, kind of talking about the way the scene changes. One of the things I really also appreciate about this movie is we kind of are put onto two paths, and this whole storyline is showing how their paths eventually merge between the McNeil family and Father Karras. And you kind of get the little bits and pieces each time they flash between the two of them.
Yeah, we get 2 seconds of him. He's at the set where Chris is filming.
Mhm.
Right.
We get to see him also briefly. And then we have Chris walking home, and then that's where we get to hear the iconic music while she's walking home.
The only time we hear the music.
Yes.
Yeah, but then it's funny. It was such a powerful tune that even though it's in one scene, everyone associates that with the movie.
Yeah. And while she's walking home, she overhears Karras counseling a priest, which I thought was kind of convenient. But they talk loud.
Yeah.
So she peeks in or listens in and then goes about her business.
I thought wasn't it really the priest counseling Karras, saying, because Karras was saying, I'm having troubles with my faith.
I took it the other way around,
Oh, okay.
but
Yeah,
what do I know?
because he's a psychiatrist for the priests at Georgetown.
Right. I figured that other priest was one of his patients.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Chris, she gets home, and we meet Sharon and Reagan oh so briefly.
Right.
Sharon being her assistant. Right away, Reagan's so happy. She's so peppy. She's sarcastic. She steals a cookie or whatever she does. And they wrestle. Such a happy family. So everything is just sunshine and roses at this point, and rainbows.
Well, she's trying to do the best she can. She's a single mom, trying to have a career in the early 70s. So,
The next scene, we have Father Karras, and he's at a subway stop. Why were the colors so freaking saturated?
probably to express his inner gloom, maybe.
Okay.
He walks by and there's this homeless guy on the ground. Says,
Oh, yeah. Can you help an old altar boy?
yeah.
This is actually supposed to be our first hint that the demon was never really targeting Reagan. It wasn't about Reagan. The demon was after Father Karras the whole time because the demon has been spying on him. Because you notice that the homeless guy, what he says is something the demon repeats later.
Which is,
Can you help an old altar boy out? He says that as one of the voices that he comes out of him.
oh, yeah.
So
Yeah.
it basically is supposed to demonstrate that, the demon has been onto the father because of his faith diminishing,
Sure.
his question of faith.
There was one really wild shot. It's right after he gets up out of the subway when he's on the street and he's crossing the street and you see this big, long New York City street. I counted like a dozen cars. And it must be a shot that's maybe showing maybe a mile. A dozen cars, New York City,
That tells me that they shot it at
5 a.m.
yep. And all those cars were placed. But it was such a 70s New York shot.
Mm-hmm.
And this movie so feels like the 70s.
Well, speaking of the 70s, the fact that everybody pulls out a cigarette at some point, like throughout the movie, how badly did that make you want to smoke, Don?
Oh, I wanted to light up right then and there. I remember back when it was acceptable to smoke in the house.
In the house, in restaurants, in a nursery.
I'd be smoking right now if I could smoke in your house.
Mhm.
But
So it turns out we have Father Karras. He's in a rough neighborhood. He's going to visit his mother.
what a good son, right?
Well, he doesn't think he's a good son.
No, but I mean, he has a lot of self-guilt and a lot of self-doubt going on.
Yeah, partly because he chose the priesthood instead of doing something where he could have made money and then helped out his mother and moved her to somewhere nice and all that. But the mother even says, "This is my home. I don't want to leave."
Well, not only that, but you would think that a mother to her son would be all kinds of stoked that he was a priest, especially back in those days.
You would think.
You would think, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think that Karis has a lot of guilt going on, and that's kind of what the demon also sees.
So now we're down in the basement of Chris's place, and Reagan's down there, and she's got a Ouija board. And okay, she's got a friend, Captain Howdy.
My first thought was your line,
Which is
play stupid games.
you win dumb prizes. I like the bit where, Chris is like, oh, I want to play. And then the thingamadoodle just flies out of her hand.
It just zips to Reagan's hand.
Yeah. And I'm thinking to myself, red flag.
Totally.
What the fuck is going on here?
Did you catch where Captain Howdy came from?
The spirit world?
Captain Howdy was a representative of her father, whose name is Harold. So that's why it was Captain Howdy. And the demon was obviously, basically they were making a statement of Reagan's already a little fucked up in the head about her father kind of abandoning them. Because they even show a magazine at one point that shows the paparazzi taking pictures because his father has basically abandoned the family. And the demon is using that against Reagan at this point to kind of worm its way into her head.
Oh,
I
interesting.
didn't catch that at all.
Yeah.
No, there did I.
And then the other unsettling thing is that she makes the questions and he tells the answers.
Yeah.
That sounded all sorts of wrong.
Red flag.
But Mom's like, okay.
There was another key thing in this scene that I've never caught until just now, which is her hobby of creating those little clay things that she paints. Did you catch that there was a little bit of introduction to that? She had like a bird or something she had created.
Uh-huh.
That actually comes up for an answer to something that happens later on in the movie.
Well,
So I'll bring that up when we can go to it right now because I think it happens a little bit later where the police are investigating the desecration of the church.
It's revealed to us at this time that Father Karras, he's having doubts about being a priest, and he's thinking that maybe he should be getting out of this.
And so he's having a beer with his buddy
Mm-hmm.
and, saying that I shouldn't have left my mom. I should be taking care of her. I don't even know if I want to be a priest anymore. And Father Dyer's like, you're the best we got.
Mm-hmm.
And Karras is like, uh-oh.
Well, this is also, I believe, where Karras gets a call that his mom's in the hospital. Did she fall and break a leg or something? Or
No, her ankle was already, because
that's right,
she
he
was already
wrapped it.
injured. Yeah.
That's right, he was wrapping it. But she ends up in the hospital, but because he has no money, was she kept in like a psych ward?
It looked like it.
It was like really run down, real horrible. And her brother's like, the mom's brother is basically saying, you should have done something else to make, get more money so you could give her a good life.
Yeah.
And then we also hear the lines that are then again repeated when Reagan is possessed of, Demi, why you do this to me, Demi? Why you leave me here, Demi?
Yeah.
Chris, she's awakened by a phone call in the middle of the night. She's got to get up. Reagan, why are you in my bed? My bed was shaking.
Red flag number 2.
And then she gets up, and then, boy, those are some loud growls or whatever those sounds were coming out of the attic.
Yeah.
So what does she do?
She's going to go look.
Oh, the light doesn't work. Oh, I know. I'll go up there with a candle.
I'm going to take an open flame up there.
My first thought was, you have servants who probably are lived in. I would have gone woke them the fuck up.
So she goes upstairs, and this is one of the jump scares that we definitely get. I don't know why the fuck you're going upstairs.
With those kind of noises going on, and you're going up there with a candle, I thought initially you're going to get up there, and you're going to see some face, and they're going to go and blow out the candle.
Oh, that would have been good. The demon face.
Yes.
Yeah, for sure.
I felt like the combination of, Carl coming out from the shadows and then the big fire coming out of the candle. Yeah, you're absolutely right. That was a good jump scare.
Chris hosts a party attended by Father Dyer, a friend of Karras, who explains Karras' role as a counselor and mentions the recent death of Karras' mother. During the party, Reagan, showing signs of illness, unexpectedly urinates in front of the guests. Later, her bed begins shaking violently after Chris puts her to sleep. Father Dyer later consoles Karis, who is feeling guilty for not being with his mother when she passed. Reagan's behavior becomes increasingly violent, but medical tests reveal no physical cause. During a house call, she exhibits abnormal strength. One night, Chris discovers Reagan asleep while her friend Burke Dennings is found dead at the bottom of the stairs outside their home. Detective William Kinderman investigates and reveals that Dennings' head was twisted backward, suggesting he was pushed from Reagan's window. Reagan's body becomes covered in sores, and she suffers a violent episode, masturbates with a crucifix, and turns her head backwards. And so Mom is having this dinner party, and we see Reagan fast asleep. And, you know, we kind of go back and forth with some of the guests, and we see the director, Burke, who
He's
Reagan,
a sloppy drunk.
He is a sloppy drunk. And Reagan was even like, do you like him? Is he going to replace Dad? Blah, blah, blah. And Mom's like, no, we're just friends. And he calls the fucking the Swedish guy a fucking Nazi.
Yeah.
And tries to pick a fight, and they got to send him home.
And then we hear that Father Karras lost his mother a couple of days before she passed away.
Right.
This is a scene that I had a little bit of issue with, and maybe it's just because the more time had passed, but his mother was just in the hospital. But when the priest is telling people about Karas's mother
She
dying,
was dead for a couple days.
they said she was dead for a couple days and found in her home.
Right.
So did she get checked out of the hospital? I thought she died in the hospital.
Well, no, she must have gotten checked out.
Yes.
And so they're all having a good old time around the piano. And
oh, here's Reagan. What's going to happen now?
she looks over at one of the guests who's an astronaut, and just in a really low, unsettling voice tells him, "You're going to die up there." And everything kind of stops, and then she starts pissing on the ground. And was it me, or did Mom really hesitate before she went to Reagan's side?
I think it was a little bit of shock.
That's what I took it as. That Mom, she's in shock. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, maybe.
Hey, it's a party everyone will be talking about.
Yeah, I guess so. Hey, remember that time Reagan pissed all over the floor?
And so now she's in the bathtub. Mother's washing her. What's wrong with me? And there's Mother. She's telling her, you just need to take your medicine. Oh, now she's on drugs.
Yeah, well, fuck.
So she's put into bed. Good night. Closes the door. Mother walks away. And then Reagan screams almost immediately, Mother! And she goes booking in there. And the bed is just shaking all over the floor. And she jumps onto the bed. And it's still shaking with both of them still on it.
Why not get off the fucking bed? I mean, at what point do you leave the fucking house?
Well, I got to tell you, Mom, she doesn't seem to get freaked out by stuff because she doesn't seem to care about, whatever's going on up in the attic. And she doesn't seem to care that much about the bed being off the ground like that.
It doesn't set off an alarm, right?
There's got to be some logical explanation to this.
Or like she's seen it before, or yeah.
Well, we're also given a quick hint throughout the movie. She's an atheist. So she doesn't believe in demons, devils, possession, all of that. So she's trying in her head to come up with what this could possibly be.
Yeah, I don't give a fuck what you believe. If your bed is moving without help, something is amiss.
Yeah. We get a brief shot of, well, actually, so Father Dreyer comes over and he wants to cheer Father Karras up. And so they have a pint, they're drinking, and then he leaves. And then Father Karras, he dreams about his mother.
Yeah. And she's going down to the subway. I would assume that she's ascending into hell because she's walking down the steps. But what did this poor woman do?
I don't know.
To have to go to hell?
This was the demon fucking with him because
okay.
There was a lot of imagery in it that made no sense. Like I said, it had the medallion in it that Marin had found. It had the same kind of dog barking and growling like the two dogs in the beginning of the movie.
Right, at the statue.
It had exactly what we were talking about. They were alluding to first she was ascending and then she's descending, so then the demon can call back later of your mom sucking cocks in hell.
I think you just wanted to say that line before we got there.
Oh, yeah.
Next shot, we have Reagan, and she is not having anything to do with taking any medicine. And then they got to strap. Did you see how the doctor gave her the shot? he just like jabbed that needle into her arm.
Every time Reagan goes to the doctor is also very unsettling.
The one where she got the needle poked into her and the blood spurted out and everything.
Yeah.
That's the number one shot where people passed out in the theater.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was the one that really disturbed people, was that scene.
Oh, that was disturbing?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah.
Hey.
So right after the doctor stabs her with the needle, Reagan, she spits at him and she yells, "You fucking bastard."
Yeah.
Which I do every time someone takes blood or anything.
And so we go through this bit and she gets checked out by the doctors.
And we're told that she has a lesion on her temporal lobe. It's some sort of a seizure disorder or something like that.
And that's how they explain away the bed shaking, is she was having a seizure.
And I love how Mother even questions it. She goes, so her having a seizure shook the entire bed. And the doctor's like, well, yeah. And then she was like, okay.
But yeah, that was wild watching the procedure getting set up for that.
And then the whole taking of the scanning and
Man.
talk about antiquated.
And just
Right?
the pain
Yeah.
on her face
Oh,
every time.
Yeah, it was heartbreaking. I felt bad for Reagan.
You
for
ever had
sure.
a spinal tap?
No.
Oh, painful as hell.
Yeah. No, thank you.
So there's no lesion. And so the doctors, they're summoned to her residence now. And they told that she had, as they're going up the stairs, that's where they talk about, no, first she had Ritalin, now she's on Thorazine. And it's just like, whoa, that's heavy duty drugs.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is the bit where they walk in and
All of them, they are just slack jawed.
yeah, because she's convulsing or being thrown around in her bed.
Violently.
And this is the bit where she was put into that harness and almost broke her back.
Mm-hmm.
I was wondering, wouldn't that just be like a double or something? Not a real person doing that?
No, they did it to Linda Blair. And in one of the behind the scenes, as soon as they call cut, that crying and screaming was real. And they couldn't tell. People just thought, oh, she's a great actress. But no, they were fucking her up. Poor thing. And they caught it on film. And then at the same time, you know, she's acting very inappropriately. And the doctor comes over to examine her or do something. And then she hits him. And he goes
She
backwards.
clocked
So,
him real well.
yeah, so she's becoming violent.
Yeah, and she's yelling, "Fuck me."
Yeah. And lick me and all this kind of stuff. And she's, yeah, that demon's taken over.
So they get her sedated, and then what do the doctors say? We should have more testing.
Of course, because they have no idea what the fuck is going on.
Well, I liked when they got to the scene of all the doctors around the table, and all their solution is, we need to lock her up.
And then Chris is like, I'm not fucking having that.
Mm-hmm.
This is bullshit. I'm sitting around all these fucking doctors and none of you can tell me what's going on with my daughter.
Yeah, the only other solution is get an exorcist.
And that,
So they tell her that she should get a psychiatrist, maybe.
right.
So she comes home, and the lights are flickering, and that's where we get that brief little image. And then we go upstairs, and we see her breath. Her room is frickin' frozen.
Right.
Did you get and kind of, I mentioned this earlier, did you get why that window was open and why it was so cold?
Because why?
Because of Pazuzu is the god of wind. And he wants that wind coming in constantly and making everything frozen. So that was kind of his thing.
So what's going on? Why is Reagan all alone? Turns out Burke was supposed to be watching her.
Yeah, not so much.
Not so much.
Because Burke ends up outside on the stairs with his head backwards.
This is something I never caught until I read about it. When Reagan turns her own head backwards, it's supposed to represent Burke at the bottom of the stairs. She's basically trying to disturb him up, because when I think the first time she turns her head around, she says, "Do you know what your cunting daughter did?" Which is representative threw Burke out the window.
So the psychiatrist, he is hypnotized. He has hypnotized Reagan and having a little conversation with her. And he says, anyway, Reagan says that there is somebody inside her, and sometimes she's scared of it.
Right.
And he asks stupidly, "Can you bring it to the forefront? I want to talk to it."
Yep. And what happens?
She attacks the doctor.
Of course she does.
Did she grab his nuts?
Oh, yes, she did.
Because I knew she grabbed him somewhere, but I couldn't tell. I even had to rewind it. I couldn't tell exactly where she grabbed him, but he wasn't having it.
That's why you don't sit so close to your patients.
Mm-hmm.
Lieutenant Kinderman is introduced to us, and he's having a little chat with Father Karras.
I thought this was an interesting conversation because Kinderman brings up witchcraft and kind of goes down that road. But for a lieutenant, trying to exhaust all your possibilities for a murder suspect, you jump right to witchcraft?
Yeah, so somebody with the back of his neck at the bottom of, well, he does half-heartedly explain why he think there could be a connection.
Yeah, he does. And maybe he's just trying to get Karras's feel and take on it because...
But to throw in the desecration of the church is somehow linked, I don't know, man. That was a stretch.
That was a bit of a stretch.
With Kinderman talking to Karras, I didn't know about this, but there was an ongoing joke thing that carries over to almost every single time Kinderman's in any of the Exorcist movies. And that is, he talks to Father Karras and says, "Would you like to see a movie with me?"
Huh.
He apparently asks that of people throughout every movie. He's so desperate to people to go to a movie with him.
I didn't realize he was in the other two.
Yeah, he's at least in the third one. I know that for sure. And in the book, it's revealed that, a lot of time passes throughout this whole story, and him and Karras become good friends who go see movies together every weekend.
Oh, well, there you go.
So Reagan, she's brought home, and Kinderman, he is at the stairs where Burke died, and he's thinking, what's at the top of those stairs?
Did you notice the blood still on the stairs?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Well, it just fucking happened.
Mm-hmm.
So
Chris, after Reagan's brought home, she finds a cross under Reagan's pillow, and she wants to know who put it there, and nobody in the house is fessing up. I was curious about this.
I wonder if one of the staff did put it under there and just didn't own up to it.
This is another part where the director purposely wanted it to be ambiguous. He didn't want you to know who did it.
And then I believe this is a point where Kinderman, he shows up at the house and he has some questions for Chris. Kinderman wants to know if Burke was in Reagan's room, and he shares his theory, as weak as it could be, and he's curious to know, how could this be?
Right. And Chris is like, no, there's no reason for him to be up there.
So after Kinderman leaves, we are shown that Chris, she is clearly shaken, and she is thinking, Reagan killed him.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so Chris goes upstairs and she hears a commotion. And when she opens the door,
It reminded me of Poltergeist.
Totally, right? Everything flying around, and Reagan has the crucifix and starts just jabbing herself with it.
Let Jesus fuck you.
Yeah.
She says it like 3 or 4 times.
And then she takes Chris's head and
Lick me.
And then she smacks Ellen Bernstein and sends her across the room. And this is the bit that the harness that Ellen Bernstein was in, it pulled her back too much. And the reaction and the shot we get in the movie is the shot that actually hurt her.
Yeah, broke her coccyx.
Yeah. So
an interesting point, the author, Blatty, he insisted when he was trying to shop around this story, this book, that he was made a producer. And because of that, he was constantly on set, and he started out as friends with the director, but by the end of it, he was blocked from even coming on set because he was constantly complaining, constantly making changes. He didn't want this masturbation. Even though it's in the book, he didn't want it in the movie because this was a young girl and he thought it set the wrong tone and got into huge fights with him over even having it. And he basically said, if you put this in the movie, it will destroy the movie. No one will go and see it. The director turned around and said, this will be the scene everybody's talking about. Ended up being the director was correct. And Blatty eventually said, well, that basically destroys my faith in humanity.
yeah, well, I mean, that alone could be a podcast,
Mm-hmm.
The Faith in Humanity. So,
We also get our first head spin.
and the bones cracking.
Yes.
That noise, every time I think of Exorcist, I always think of that noise.
So good. Convinced her daughter is possessed, Chris contacts Father Karras, who visits Reagan. The possessed Reagan claims to be the devil. vomiting on Karis and speaking in tongues. The demon threatens to stay in Reagan until she dies. After further investigation, Karis recommends an exorcism. His superiors approves, but only under the guidance of an experienced priest. Father Marin, who has performed an exorcism before, is summoned. Father Marin arrives at the house, and he and Karis begin the exorcism by reading from the Roman ritual, as the demon hurls curses at them. After a break, Marin takes nitroglycerin for his heart. Karis returns to the room where the demon appears as his mother, unsettling him. Marin sends Karis away and continues the exorcism alone. Karis reassures Chris that Reagan will survive and re-enters the room, only to find Marin dead from a heart attack, while Reagan laughs. In a rage, Karis demands that the demon possess him instead. The demon complies, ripping the medallion of St. Joseph from Karis' neck and freeing Reagan. Karis then throws himself out the window, falling down the stone steps outside. Chris and Detective Kinderman enter the room, where Chris embraces a now healed Reagan. Outside, Father Dyer administers last rites to a dying Karis. As the McNeils prepare to leave, Father Dyer says goodbye. Though Reagan has no memory of her ordeal, she is moved by the sight of Dyer's clerical collar and kisses him on the cheek. Before departing, Chris offers Dyer the medallion found in Reagan's room, but he declines, suggesting she keep it. Dyer then briefly reflects at the steps where Karis died before walking away. Roll credits. So, Mom is out of options, and she's out of her wits. And so during that doctor's visit, they said something about an exorcism. So then she goes to talk to
Father Karras.
And she shows up and she's got a black eye and she's all kind of beat up. And Father Karras is like, there hasn't been an exorcism in forever. Mm-hmm. You know, you probably know more than most priests know about exorcisms.
What's great about this is throughout the movie, as I said earlier, we had two paths being shown to us. We get to see what the path that Father Karras is on and the path that Chris is on. Now they have diverged. Now we have them together, and now like the real story can begin, the battle against evil.
Yeah, and this is where things pick up. And Karras goes to visit Reagan, and this might be my favorite scene in the movie. He walks in, and Reagan looks at him and says, "What a lovely day for an exorcism." Karras says, "Are you looking forward to this exorcism?" And the devil's like, "Yes." And Karras is like, "Why? I'm going to drive you out of Reagan." And he says, "No, we're going to get closer." And he says, "You and Reagan?" And he says, "No, you and us." And so this is telling us that he's coming after the priest.
Yeah, because he said the Pazuzu or whatever says the whole point of this was to bring him to us.
Right.
And basically, we're given the indication of, is him Father Karras or is him Marin? We don't know for sure yet. Or is it the pair of them to take them both out?
I always took it as him coming after Karras because he was the first one who made contact with him. And then so he says, "Am I talking to Reagan?" And he says, "No." And he goes, "Well, let's introduce ourselves. I'm Damien Karras." And this bit is it's like very elegant in a creepy kind of way, right? Reagan says, "And I'm the devil. Now will you kindly remove these straps?" And I love Karras's even-keeled response to that. "Well, if you're the fucking devil, make the straps disappear." And the devil's response is even more elegant.
It's so calm too.
And the devil says, I'm not going to do that because that would be a vulgar display of power. Mm. So
I think this is also the scene where the desk, the nightstand drawer opens up.
Yeah.
And then he closes it. Do it again. Not right now.
Right. And then we also get the split pea soup.
Right. And that happens because he wants to know his mother's maiden name.
Right. Right. Because his mother is in hell with those people.
When it came to the soup, there's a couple of really fun stories. First of all, they tried Campbell's soup. They were going to try to use that as the soup. Didn't look right, so they ended up going with Anderson's brand pea soup. So if you ever need the Exorcist soup, you go with Anderson's brand pea soup. The other thing I thought was interesting about it is This director really went for shock value. He would do things throughout this movie to get reactions out of his actors. Like, for example, one time he was trying to get Father Karras, the actor, Jason Miller, to react to something, wasn't getting the reaction he wanted, wasn't getting the extremeness that he needed. So he fired a blank gun at him, very close to him to really startle him. Another one was he went through the tests and everything of explaining to him how this whole pea soup thing was going to work. And he told him the pea soup is going to hit you in the chest. So just be prepared for it. Don't be startled. It's going to hit you in the chest. Well, when it came time to actually film the scene, he had it aimed at his face and hit him right in the face to get that startle. So that was an actual reaction from him of being startled and getting hit in the face.
And so Reagan is progressively getting worse, and her physical appearance is getting worse, and that demon voice is coming out, and Karras has to get permission in order to give an exorcism.
Well, speaking of the demon voice, do you know the actress that, I can't remember her name, that did the demon voice? She was a famous actor from other stuff. Do you know how she created that voice?
How?
She told the director, I'm a recovering alcoholic, but if I'm going to do this, I have to start drinking again. I have to smoke, and I have to eat raw eggs every day so that I can get my voice to be to that point. So this person went off the wagon, and because they were saying such nasty things for the voiceover, she actually insisted that she had two friends of hers that were priests that were in the room with her every time she recorded, so that afterwards she could go to them and cry to them about what she had to do.
So in the story, in the movie anyway, Chris and Father Karras, they discuss what to do next. And he doesn't know if he can make an exorcism happen. And his suggestion to Chris is that Reagan should be checked into probably the best hospital for a good 6 months.
And this is the bit where they're downstairs talking, and Chris is like, you tell me for a fact that nothing is wrong with my daughter and it's all in her head, and I'll say cool. And he can't say it because part of him thinks Reagan might be fucked.
Didn't he also get a recording from her the first time he was in the room?
Yeah, he needed kind of like proof.
Yeah, and he takes it to the specialist, and he asks what language is, and the specialist says it's English.
It's just backwards.
Just backwards.
Yeah.
And this is another thing that I think I might have caught one of the last few times, but when they play the recording in reverse, you hear the demon mention Marin, which tells you it's been wanting Marin to come, or it knows Marin's coming.
Yeah.
So it's the second time they get together that the recording happens. And this is also the time that he throws the holy water on her that isn't the holy water.
But she has that reaction.
So what's that about?
I had a theory on that even though it was tap water, it was used by a priest. And that way, and somehow it almost made it holy. Go on.
It doesn't work like that, but go on.
That, or just the fact of the demon thinks it's holy water or anything holy, it has an effect on it.
I think the demon was just fucking with him.
You think so?
Yeah.
Potentially.
Because, I mean, think about what the demon claimed who the demon was, right? The devil. So I'm sure he was just fucking with them.
Marin did also say this demon's going to lie constantly.
Well, he's a fucking demon.
Like he said that there's other people in us, and Father Maris says, no, there's only one demon in there.
So afterwards, when Father Karras leaves, goes downstairs, and he looks ragged. His collar is loose, and Chris is like, "You want a drink?" And he's like, "Please."
Yeah, they both need to take a second.
And then he talks about how it was tap water, and this is not going to help, your case for a possession. I don't know if I can go to them with this.
Yeah, but he does, and it does.
She comes back to Father Karras, and she says she killed Brooke Dennings. This is where she says it out loud.
Right.
And so, with that, I think, that's what compels Karras, especially after he has the recording and then the backwards bit. And then with that, it's like, how the hell can that happen? And I think it's these 2 points that makes him, okay, I got to go talk to somebody about this.
Right. And he gets permission.
We're an hour and a half into the movie, and Father Karras, he's called back to the McNeil residence. And we get this wonderful blue light, long shadows as he's coming up the stairs. previously, every time, we've been having something happen, we have daylight. But now he's going up the stairs and it's Sharon taking him upstairs, and she didn't want to share this with Chris.
Right.
And then, this is where we get the help me on her stomach.
Right.
So after this is where we get Father Karras, and he's asking for permission to perform an exorcism.
And ultimately they say yes. And then this leads us to, I think, the most iconic shot.
It's the poster shot.
Right. Of this movie. And it's Father Marion arriving in the cab, and he gets out and he stands under the streetlight. But just the way that this shot is composed, and the way you have the fog coming in, and just the way it's lit, it's supposed to be, here comes the priest to the rescue, but you don't feel that when you watch this shot.
No, you don't.
The director, who was a big art fan, took this shot from a painting and thought, wouldn't it be great to have a figure looking up these stairs, from this painting, with the shaft of light coming through the fog from that bedroom window. And they had a lot of problems with the fog. I guess it was really windy that day, so they had to bring in lots of fog machines to create that.
Yeah.
So much to the point that the fire department shows up
Because they thought
something was happening for real.
Georgetown was on fire. Yeah.
But yeah, it's such an iconic shot when Father Marion arrives. And, having that, there are few other pictures that you look at when, you're shown that image and you know what it goes to.
Right.
I mean, my God, it's
seared into people's brains.
Yes.
It's seared into movie history. So, yeah.
But you're right. You do not have any I don't want to say any confidence, but you definitely, oh boy.
Here we go.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Shit just got serious.
Yep. And so Father Marion shows up, and him and Karras are talking, and he's like, all right, don't say anything. Don't,
Oh my God. I love it when he gets inside the house, and Marion, as he's introducing himself, Marion's name is yelled by Reagan upstairs, and it startles everybody downstairs.
Yes, because the devil knows he's there.
I also like how when Marion comes in, he's right to business. He gives Karras a shopping list of go get all these items from the church across the street or whatever.
Yep. And he comes back and he does, and we're going to get ready and go to war.
We are 1 hour, 37 minutes into the movie when they enter the bedroom. And so I think I'm willing to call this Act 3.
Sure.
According to what I read, the entire exorcism of this movie, the movie's called The Exorcist, the entire exorcist scenes take up 9 minutes of the movie.
And those 9 minutes are pretty fucking effective.
Oh, yeah. That's the scariest part of the movie for me.
Oh, me too.
And when they enter into the room, I love the look that Chris has on her face. Just complete fear as they close the door on her.
Right. What the fuck is going to happen?
Yeah.
What of the exorcism scene was either the most startling, scary, or creepy part for you?
I think when she levitates.
When she levitates?
I think that's...
with her eyes all white?
I think that's really super freaky. And any time that she is spurting out insults and getting angry.
Oh my God, yeah, absolutely. Because, Reagan, as soon as they come in the room, she gets things rolling. Stick your cock up her ass, you motherfucking worthless cocksucker.
And just, it keeps coming out and coming out. And she knows about Karras' mom, and she starts digging at him.
Can do the voices too.
Yeah, and it's fucking creepy.
Ken, did you have during the exorcism, any part that really stood out to you?
Well, probably the levitation. The head spin's iconic.
What I like about the head spin is, as she's spinning the head and it goes all the way around, Marion has to remind Karras to finish the prayer, or tell him to finish the prayer, but you can tell that Karras is so astonished or blown away about what he sees that by the time the head all the way goes back around, he finishes the prayer, and it's very well timed.
For me, the creepiest part of the exorcism, especially with the way the lighting was working, the director purposely had the light on the character so you couldn't really see what was behind him. He wanted it as dark as possible, was the shadow or like the silhouettes of the tongue of the tongue coming out of her mouth and
Oh, I
flickering
remember that.
around.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
And to me, I don't know, that tongue just really freaked me out.
Yeah. Another one is when Reagan is on the bed and is reaching out, and then we have the silhouette of the statue on the left-hand side of the screen too.
Yeah.
That's pretty moving as well. There's a bit in there where Karis is watching and we get another glimpse of Pazuzu. And this is also a bit where we get Pazuzu and Reagan's face kind of melding together.
Yeah.
Yeah, we get a shot of that towards the end.
Yeah.
Well, also what kind of, always kind of gives me, I don't know if it kind of gives me the uneasy feeling is when you see those straps start to rip.
Yeah.
And she's about to get up and do something.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, she gets up and levitates, but
Yeah.
I hear what you're saying.
And then she pukes and it goes all over Father Marin's stole. And, they just keep on going, just in a nice even keeled voice. And then that's that whole bit, where, they cast her out and then, oh my gosh, she just sits there and laughs. And then she spins her head.
Yeah. And so they take a break and then
Karis, he looks worn out.
he does because the demon keeps picking on him
Mm-hmm.
and it's taking a toll. But they got to go back in and they got to continue moving forward.
But, Damien, he goes back in on his own. And that's where he gets the bit about, I'm your mother.
Demi, why you do this to me, Demi?
Yeah.
Why you do this?
And then at some point
Marin comes in and then, he's not responding. So he tells Damien to leave.
Well, Damien starts arguing with the demon.
he starts
You're
giving
not my
in.
mother. You're not my mother.
He starts falling for the trap. And so Marin tells him to leave and he goes out there. And this is the bit where Chris asks Marin, is my daughter going to die? And when he says, no, she's not, there's a look in his eye
He has resolve.
that no matter what, he's going to save Reagan.
And he decides, I got to get back up there.
In the interview with the director, he talked about this was supposed to show, as you mentioned, the resolve of Father Karras, in that the only time he's met Reagan and even been around her has been when she's possessed. He never saw the nice Reagan or built a connection with her, yet he's still willing to fight so hard for her. And the fact that he makes the sacrifice play at the end shows he's such a good person.
Well, yeah. Yeah. And so
The doorbell rings and it's Lieutenant Kinderman.
that's good timing on the cop's part, right? Karras goes back into the room and he sees that Marin is dead. And I always thought that was weird that they killed him off screen.
Yeah, I
And
kind of did too.
It was just kind of oh, by the way, Marin's dead as well.
And Reagan, she's sitting up in the bed. And,
Laughing.
Yeah.
And Karras gets pissed.
And he attacks her.
And he says, enough of this bullshit, demon. Take me. And again, self-sacrifice in these types of movies will always win out. You know what I mean? And
We see Karras's eyes change.
the demon bought it and he got what he wanted. And then, so what does Karras do? Hurls himself out the fucking window.
Well, because he sees himself closing in, we see through Karras's eyes, his hands outstretched that he's going to strangle her.
Right. And so he won't let that happen.
That's why he yells, no, no, no.
And then he jumps out the window. I think that this is one of my favorite shots because we see the camera tumbling as if we were
right. I
Karras.
remember.
And it's pretty effective.
Mhm.
Pretty effective. And then we get Reagan, who is bruised, but she's back to normal.
And
she's tripping.
and she's crying out for mother. And so they come into the room. It's like, what the hell?
How do you explain this?
But
Right.
she's normal again. I mean, she still has a little bit of the scratches on her face, but her color's back. She's talking normal. It's gone.
Yeah. Yeah. Because Karras took it with him and jumped out the fucking window.
Now we're down to Karras, and he's got a huge crowd around. And here comes Father Dreyer.
Who gives him his last rites.
I was surprised he was alive.
The way he
So was
grips
I.
that hand.
Yeah.
Father Dyer was having problems filming that scene. They weren't getting enough dramatic, acting out of him. So did you hear how the director got him to be more dramatic?
Nope.
He basically called him over, and he was friends with this guy. He had been friends with him for a long time. And he says, do you trust me? And the guy's like, yeah. And he goes, I love you, right? And he goes, oh, I love you too. And after he said that, he popped him right in the face, smacked him right across the face really, really hard. He had a sense of the Dreyer had a sense of just panic on his face. He says, get over there, start filming now.
Interesting.
So that reaction of him crying and everything was right after being smacked.
Huh. There you go. And so the next morning we get the McNeils and
Well, I don't know if it's the next morning because it's moving day. It's moving day. It's,
I would have gotten the hell out of there.
yeah, I
that
mean, my
night.
point is the next day or the next scene is moving day and they're getting the fuck out,
Yep.
which, yeah, probably smart move.
Mm-hmm. And of course, like I said, Reagan is kind of looking pretty normal. She's got a few little scratches and dings on her, but otherwise she's all back to her being her happy, jolly self. And it's revealed she doesn't remember any of it.
And I think that's a nice touch
yeah.
Mhm.
that she doesn't have to remember any of it.
Mhm.
And she sees Father Dyer's collar. She gets moved by it. She gives him a kiss and kind of like a thank you, even though he didn't do jack shit. But I guess he represents the man. So,
Mhm.
and so they leave.
Well, before they leave, Dreyer offers her that medallion. I don't know if it's a St. Christopher or whatever it is. I always thought he should have given it to Reagan as like a protection.
No, she didn't want it anyway.
So we get one more shot of the stairs.
And this is the second time that we hear the tubular bells
Mhm.
as the movie's ending. So we only get it twice in the film.
Now, do you want to know what's wrong with the Father Karras getting possessed scene?
Nothing.
According to Christian doctrine, a priest cannot be possessed by a demon because they are considered, they had to have the Holy Spirit within them. And because of that, they can't be possessed.
Well, I'm going to say that,
They never fucked with a demon?
yeah, probably not.
Well, what sort of halfway maybe could work is that Father Karras, he was having doubts that he was faith-filled enough to be a priest.
I don't think that a priest is incapable of being possessed because at the end of the day, he's still a man,
Yeah.
still human, still has free will.
It's supposedly something to do with when they take their sacraments, it shields them from.
Maybe,
Being
but
possessed.
I think the devil can get right through that shit.
I kind of like what Ken said. What I was leaning towards where you said is that he was having a lack of faith and maybe he was closer to being not a priest than he was being a priest. But then I also got to think he was demanding come into me. So he obviously believed something.
Yeah.
His faith, I think the whole idea of this is that his faith had been renewed,
Well, he's dead, so it doesn't matter.
for now.
And that was The Exorcist.
Welcome to a new segment that we like to call
Face the wheel.
The premise is simple. I will spin the wheel and whatever category comes up, John and Don will apply it to the movie that we are currently reviewing. Once they have presented their idea to me, I will decide the winner of this week's wheel. So here are the categories: mashup, plot, rename, genre, reboot, alternate ending. I liked it better when it was called spin again. Pick any. Add any character from any movie. Here we go. I like it better when it was called.
Oh, good.
So we have to do movies that came out before it?
No, I mean,
No,
Okay.
I say no.
he's the judge. All right, I'm going to say I liked it better when they called it.
It? Kidding. I kid.
I don't want to use any of the other exorcism movies because that's too easy.
And you can't use the exorcism of Emily Rose.
What did I just fucking say?
I thought you were talking about the other ones in the series.
I meant all exorcist movies, all exorcism movies. What are you looking up?
I'm trying to remember a name of a movie.
Uh-huh. I like this better when it was called Ghostbusters.
It would have been funny. That would have been a great mashup to have the Ghostbusters come in.
Hang on, follow me here. A bunch of zany things happens and then a woman gets possessed. No, that's dumb. Fuck, this is a hard one.
Ghostbusters 2?
It's not about ego, the master of evil. Try to battle my boys. It's not legal. Okay, The Exorcist. I liked it better when it was called. You know what? This movie is too iconic. I will not desecrate it with another, liked it better when it was called. That's going to be my answer. This movie is too iconic.
So for my pick, I like it better when it was called Little Miss Sunshine, because I don't know why that popped in my head, and I was reimagining that other movie. What if that girl was possessed the whole time?
That's why she danced and did what she did.
Exactly.
Interesting.
That she had the same demon in her. So the only thing different, she didn't throw up on anybody.
So this week, the point goes to John. And there you have it, listeners. And that concludes this week's...
Wait, why does John win?
Because you didn't have anything.
Because this movie is too fucking iconic.
But that's not the homework assignment.
The point goes to John. And there you have it, listeners. And that concludes this week's...
That's a fucking horseshit.
Face the wheel.
All right, what do you guys think? You guys are ready to rate this flick?
I'm ready to rate this flick. John, are you ready to rate this flick? Oh, wait. You better not vomit. Do not vomit.
And do not say anything about sticking crucifixes in certain areas.
That's an extra vulgar display of power, Kenneth.
But what the hell? Sure, I can throw something up. Throw something together.
Hey, Professor, how do we do our ratings?
We do our ratings on a scale of 1 to 5 fucks. 5 fucks is a movie that we think is cinematic gold. A 1 fuck movie, you get done watching it and you're like, I'm never watching that again.
And what's a 0?
A 0 fuck movie, you get done watching it, you turn to your buddy and you're like, oh, for shit's sake, what the hell? Why would you make me? I want 2 hours and 2 minutes of my life back.
Or in other words, we just don't give a fuck. All right, who wants to go first?
I can go first.
Very good, John.
But
You go first.
Thank you. But before I do, Dawn, would you like to guess what my rating is going to be?
The Exorcist. I would be shocked if you gave it anything lower than a 5. I'm going to say you're giving it cinematic gold.
You're saying cinematic gold on this one?
Yep.
Okay. When I was a kid back in the 1980s, horror movies were my go-to whenever I got to pick out a Blockbuster VHS rental. Because of that, these horror films are my guilty pleasure. They were my go-to choices when I craved a good scare, between Prince of Darkness, Invasion of the Body Snatchers, and of course, The Exorcist. But when it came to these 3 movies, I always suffered from horror hesitation, knowing that I would be freaked out later, alone in the dark, trying to fall asleep. I call myself a horror enthusiast and a fear aficionado. It's obvious to most that The Exorcist is the pinnacle of horror films. Even today, new movies are still compared to it. The Exorcist featured groundbreaking special effects and makeup, maintained a constant atmosphere of chills and tension, delivered iconic performances, and had memorable, disturbing scenes. Its impact on the horror genre, especially possession movies, was monumental. Once you see it, it possesses your mind. You never look at green pea soup the same way again. Anytime someone brings up the movie, that sound of bones crackling as her head turns around leaps to your brain, and the quotes immediately spill from your mouth. This movie leaves a lasting impression. My only gripe of this movie is that after 20 or 30 viewings, it loses some of its creepy allure. But even then, it's still an amazingly crafted film. It's a must watch for any horror enthusiast. So it's for those reasons I'm giving The Exorcist 5 fucks.
Bam, nailed it.
When
cinematic gold.
When it comes to horror movies, this one is solid gold and remains a benchmark for other movies.
I'll go next.
Hey, you go, bud.
The Exorcist. Talk about a gigantic horror movie. I don't know if there is many other horror movies that totally encapsulate what a horror movie is supposed to be. It is thrilling and horrifying and spooky, creepy, And it doesn't necessarily have those jump scares. And there is, you do have some gore, not a lot, but it is a quintessential horror movie. I am not necessarily a horror movie guy, but I will say that I think that this is an excellent horror movie. The characters are great. I love how we have Father Karras. He is a person, he is our protagonist that has us wondering, is he up to the task? And in the end, I guess he is, because he does get the demon out of Regan. But, I was mildly surprised because for whatever reason, I didn't remember him dying at the end of the movie. It's like, he died too. Okay. But I really liked his character because it gave us just enough doubt that maybe he may not be able to do this task. But in the end, he does get it done. And Father Merrin, he doesn't spend all that much time on the screen. And we are led to believe that is he going to be able to do this? Because doggone it, he seems pretty darn old and a little precarious. But in the end, he doesn't make it out alive. Bummer. Regan, I really enjoyed the character of Regan both ways. When she's a little girl, being a little girl, and also when she is possessed. The movie has some wonderfully creepy moments to it that just cannot be denied. And as I said during the pod earlier, it stays with you. It stayed in my head. And I was at Mass this morning and wow, I'm thinking about The Exorcist as I'm sitting here in church. Okay. So I think that I'm going to have to give this movie 4.5 fucks.
4.5 fucks from the professor.
Hey, Don, why don't you go next?
Hey, thanks, John. I think I will. The Exorcist is, in my opinion, for me, the scariest movie I've ever seen. And I know that I've talked about other scary movies before. And yes, A Nightmare on Elm Street did affect me when I first watched it, but I can watch it now and feel perfectly fine with it and enjoy it and love it for the great movie that it is. But I have to gear up and prepare myself to this day to watch The Exorcist. Like you were saying, Ken, it stays with you. And we have to go on this journey with this little girl and watch her just be almost torn apart by this demon and becoming something unholy. It is definitely unsettling. And in a way, it's sad. And I think that a lot of the scenes that are hard to get through are just the ones where, like, the parents and the doctors, they don't believe what's going on and they're just trying to do whatever it is they can do to help her, drugs, psychotherapy, this, that, and the other. And really, this story is a good old-fashioned good versus evil story. And what I think is scary about it is they show us just enough to let our minds do the rest. And whether you believe in God, whether you believe in the devil, it doesn't matter because there is such a thing called good and evil. And we know, living in the world that we live in, that evil exists. It exists every single day. And if there's evil, there's got to be good. There's got to be. And so I think keeping that in mind while watching this adds a little bit to the creep factor, at least for me. Technically, the movie is very soundly made and everything about it just fits. And it will go down in history as a game changer in the movie industry. And so it's for those reasons I too am giving The Exorcist cinematic gold. 5 fucks from me.
I think another thing that this movie does so well is we get lots of little breaks. Real world, descent into horror. Real world, further descent into horror. Real world, further descent into horror.
And it's very well balanced.
Exactly.
And very well paced. So I really appreciated that. With cinematic gold from me and the comic book guy and 4.5 fucks from the professor, that gives The Exorcist an average of 4.8 fucks, which now ties it in the third position with Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, Kill Bill Volume 1, Ghostbusters, and Lethal Weapon. It is slightly better than Kill Bill Volume 2, The Train to Busan, Die Hard, and The Shawshank Redemption. And it is slightly worse than Raiders of the Lost Ark, The Dark Knight, Jaws, and Back to the Future. So there you have it. All right, that is going to wrap it up for this episode of Three Guys in a Flick. If you would like to know which movie we're going to be reviewing next, please check out the website. Speaking of which, hey, John, where can they find us?
Well, they can always find us at our website, threeguysinaflick.com, where we go ahead and post our show notes. Our podcasts are available there, and we have a web form on there that you can go ahead and submit a movie you'd like us to review next. You can also find us at all of social media or any place that hosts podcasts. And while you're listening to us, go ahead and give us a like, give us a top score, and we'd love it if you left us some comments because we'd like to know how we're doing.
All right. I just want to thank anybody who has listened and who has suggested a movie. If you keep listening, we'll keep recording. For Three Guys in a Flick, I'm Don.
I'm John.
I'm Ken. Thanks for listening.
The power of three guys compels you.
The
Power of three guys compels you. The power of three guys compels you.
Three guys with some mics, yeah, dart into the flicks. We're here for the real talk, no time for the tricks. Don as the captain, steering us right. Kid drops now to shedding light. John with the comics, bringing the hype. From the good, the bad, to the absurd, we break it down, make sure you heard. Passion for the screen, we ride or die about movies. You know we always give a fuck, no lie.
The power of Christ compels you.
He's also a master of ambiguity. What is it?
Ambiguity. The power of Christ compels you.
Tell me the medical condition for levitating.
Tell me the medical condition for physically altering into a demon. The power of Christ compels you.
Do we want to go into the masturbation scene, or are there still more before that?
Yeah, there's more.
Okay. I'm eager to get to masturbation.
Clearly. The power of Christ compels you.
Physically speaking, because the Exorcist,
The power of Christ compels you.
I would love to actually, for us to go visit those stairs and see that kind of iconic location, but I have a feeling Don would push me down them.
I wouldn't have to push you. You would fall.
You would just relive that.
Right, Ken?
my suggestion is we look at him from the bottom.
But you have to ascend.
Right. Plus, he's so clumsy he would fall.
Yeah.
Right, Ken?
But he's got bad knees. He wouldn't want to take those stairs up.
Oh, for fuck's sakes, you're killing me, guy.
He's trying to give you the cover story.
Yes, I know, but I'm taking the high road.
Oh.
Yes, he's high road Ken tonight. The power of Christ compels you. All right, now's the time. No young ears, so it's on like Donkey Kong.
I love he makes an exception only one time, and that's when his daughter is here.
Yeah, and I would do it fucking again. The power of Christ compels you. All right, go. What do you got?
The ex-whore pissed on me.
That's pretty good.
That's original. What's yours?
Well, originally I was going to go with the Sexorist, but it turns out that is actually a 1974 porn starring Linda Lamar. And because I do my research here, I spent the day watching it.
Of course you did.
He spent the whole day watching it.
Well,
so what does that tell you?
Actually, I made it about 10 minutes in. There were no boobs. There were no 70s bush. I had to turn it off.
The power of Christ compels you.
So the other ones I went with were the Exorcist, the Exorgasm, or the Exortwat,
Yeah.
or the Extra Twat.
The power of Christ compels you. I
What do you
think
got?
I had the Exorfist
Ooh.
and the Exorpiss. So some kinkiness going on there.
The same thing would have worked for you, the Extra Fist.
The power of Christ compels you. We'll quit one day, Ken.
No, you won't.
He's going to get into it.
No, he won't. The power of Christ compels you. All right, may all of your days and nights be filled with happiness. All right, fuck up. Good night.
Tune in, feel the thrill, catch the vibe. As three guys in a fight, keep the passion alive. Fuck that night.